Nvidia have released the GTX 1660 Super, and MSI have sent over their best gaming X option for me to check out. So let's see what it can do in this review. We'll look at gaming at 1080p and 1440p resolutions, as well as thermals, power draw, overclocking, and also compare it with the 1660 and 1660 Ti. Like many other recent MSI cards, it's got a dark grey and black theme, nice neutral colours, and should blend in well with most builds. There are two fans on the front, a metal backplate with a nice brushed finish and MSI logo on the back, 8-pin power connector on the top, no option of SLI here. There's RGB lighting on the top and bottom fans, as well as from behind the MSI logo on the top. And this can be controlled using MSI's LightSync software to change the effects or match it with the rest of your system. For the I/O, we've got 3 DisplayPort 1.4 outputs and single HDMI 2.0B output. And as you can see here, it's a dual slot card. In terms of dimensions, it's basically the same as MSI's previous 1660 and 1660 Ti Gaming X models, so not too large. The metal backplate should help improve overall strength and reduce sag. However, looking behind it, there aren't any thermal pads, so it's not being fully utilized to help with heat dissipation. Inside, there's a metal heat spreader covering the memory, although this doesn't appear to come into contact with the main heatsink. Underneath, we can see the thermal pads on the memory. Interestingly, there's a pad up the top that doesn't actually come into contact with anything, while the pad down the bottom offers half coverage. The GPU die is the only contact point to the heatsink for heat removal, and it appears to be using 3 heat pipes. In terms of specs, it's basically got the same CUDA core count as the GTX 1660, same base and boost clock speeds as well. The only way that it differs is in the memory. The new Super version uses faster GDDR6 memory instead, which is actually higher than the 1660 Ti. The MSI Gaming X card we're looking at here is overclocked out of the box, and this higher boost speed makes this MSI's fastest 1660 Super. With all of that out of the way, let's check out how the card actually performs in games. The system that I'm testing with has an Intel i7-8700K CPU overclocked to 5GHz on all cores in an MSI Z390 Ace motherboard, along with 16GB of DDR4 3200 CL14 memory running in dual channel. You can check the links in the description for details on all of the components, as well as for up-to-date pricing. To get an idea of how the 1660 Super stacks up, I'll also include results of the 1660 below it and 1660 Ti ahead of it at 1080p and 1440p resolutions. All testing was done with the same Nvidia drivers and Windows updates, so let's get into the results. Battlefield 5 was tested in campaign mode with ultra settings. I've got the GTX 1660 Super highlighted in red. And as expected, it's in between the GTX 1660 and GTX 1660 Ti, though it's closer to the Ti. Either way, even at Ultra 1440p, above 60fps averages were hit in my test. Shadow of the Tomb Raider was tested using the game's built-in benchmark tool at highest settings. The 1660 Super is about in the middle of these options, but closer to the 1660 Ti once more. Control was tested walking through the start of the game with the same test pass done each time. Again, the results weren't too far behind the 1660 Ti, and even with the high setting preset, almost 60fps was achieved at 1080p. Ghost Recon Breakpoint was tested using the built-in benchmark with the very high setting preset. The difference between the Super and Ti was extremely minimal here, with even less of a difference when we step up to 1440p. Fortnite was tested running through the same section of the map for each test with the new Chapter 2 map. Even at epic settings, any of these options is offering a great 1080p experience, and was still playable at 1440p too. Borderlands 3 was tested with the game's benchmark tool. Like the other titles, the 1660 Super is offering fair performance and is in between the 1660 and 1660 Ti. Apex Legends was tested with all settings maxed out. At 1080p, there was basically no difference between the 1660 Super and 1660 Ti. However, the difference was more pronounced at 1440p, where it was still very playable with these frame rates. Assassin's Creed Odyssey was tested with the game's built-in benchmark with very high settings, and there was basically no change between the Super and Ti here. As we've seen, we've been able to get some nice performance in the games tested. Just for reference, at 1080p, I found the 1660 Super was about 11% faster than the 1660, while the 1660 Ti was about 3% ahead of the 1660 Super, much less of a difference. As for overclocking, I've tested a couple of games to see what extra gains can be had. I was able to overclock the GPU core by 160 MHz and memory by 500 MHz using MSI Afterburner. However, these were by no means finely tuned settings. Shadow of the Tomb Raider was tested with the game's benchmark tool. I've got the 1660 Super overclock results at the top, also in red with the stock results. We can see that it's now ahead of the 1660 Ti. There's an 11% increase to average FPS at 1440p compared to stock, and an 8.5% boost at 1080p. Control was tested running through the start of the game, and again the 1660 Super once overclocked was beating the 1660 Ti. Average FPS was 9% higher than its stock at 1440p, and almost 7% higher at 1080p. So we're seeing some decent performance, but what are the thermals like? As all three of my graphics cards are MSI's Gaming X, they've got the same cooler. Temperatures were reasonable on the GPU core even after leaving this benchmark on loop for an hour. As for the power draw, interestingly, the 1660 Super was using more power than the 1660 Ti when under the same workload, despite not performing quite as well. With the overclock in place, power draw increases even further. For up-to-date pricing, check the links in the description, as prices will change over time. In the US, you can pick up this model for about $250 US, while here in Australia, we're looking at 439 Australian dollars. As we saw in my dedicated comparison between the 1660 Super and 1660 Ti, the Super offers much better value. The performance is close to the Ti at stock while also being cheaper, and as we saw, it was possible to overclock the Super to get ahead of the Ti. Basically, if you're buying today, the Ti seems a little pointless unless you can get it on a good deal or you really care about using a bit less power. There are cheaper GTX 1660 Super cards available, even within MSI's own lineup such as the Ventus. For the most part, you're paying extra for the Gaming X for the better cooler, as more metal just costs more money to produce, and it comes with higher boost clock speeds out of the box. If you're willing though, in pretty much all cases, you can manually overclock this difference yourself. So I think it depends more on whether you want one with a better cooling solution. If not, it's definitely possible to save some money on a cheaper 1660 Super card. That said, this particular model did appear to have good cooling, which was in line with the other Gaming X cards above and below it. The fan doesn't even spin up until it rises above 60 degrees Celsius. During stress tests, the fan RPM averaged below 1300, so it was still on the quieter side, and I didn't notice any coil whine with my unit. So what did you think of MSI's GTX 1660 Super Gaming X graphics card? As we've seen, it's easily able to handle 1080p gaming, and in some less demanding titles, 1440p worked alright too. It's a step up over the 1660 model, but not quite as good as the Ti version. However, when you consider the price difference between the Super and Ti, the Super appears to be better value. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments, and if you're new to the channel, get subscribed for future tech videos like this one.